I wanted to do a video on how to easily identify a 400 small block and why I think they're one of the best small blocks that Chevy ever made. I know there's a few drawbacks, but they are drawbacks that you can overcome pretty easily. When you're walking the junkyards or looking in an old Impala or Caprice or wagon from 1970 through, I don't know, 78 or so, whenever they quit making these things. They might have quit making them in around 1980. The first, really, you're not going to be able to see much other than this. If the harmonic balancer is cut away like this, so it's externally balanced, that's a dead giveaway. And it's also the larger 8-inch balancer. Now, you hear people refer to the casting number. They'll say, I have a 509 block or an 811, or actually 611. This is an 817. And these do not guarantee that it's a 400, especially a 509 block, which a lot of them were. They could be a 350. So going this casting number, they're referring to the last three numbers, and in this case it's 817. A 509 block, for example, does not guarantee that you have a 400. It could be a 350. So don't be fooled by that. And if you want to know if it's a 4-bolt main or not, see how this one has two freeze plugs? There's one here and one here. And you can actually see where it's cast if they were going to put a third freeze plug in, but they didn't. If it's a 2-holer, I call them, if it's a 2 freeze plug, it's a 2-bolt main. If it's got 3 freeze plugs, it's a 4-bolt main. I had a commenter say that I was wrong and that not all of the 3-holers are 4-bolt mains, and maybe he's right. But I've been heavily involved with the largest auto wrecking yard in the Pacific Northwest, and in 15 years of digging these things out, I have never seen a 3-holer not be a 4-bolt main. In other words, every single one that I've personally seen that had 3 freeze plugs was also a 4-bolt main. And a really easy way to tell if it's a 400, if it's a part, is, well, first of all, there's not much meat in between the cylinders. You can see how close together the cylinder walls are. But the giveaway is these steam holes right here, right there, and right there. You can spot that a mile away. There's another 400, and you don't even need to, those 2 holes, they're in between each cylinder. So like this one here, see the casting number, it's a 509 block. It's a 2-bolt main. Not sure what the casting number is on this one, but here you go. This is so you got 1, 2 freeze plugs. This one right here, it's a 400 because cylinders are super close together, and you got steam holes. And it's got 3 freeze plugs, 1, 2, 3. Here's the one with 2 freeze plugs, and there you go. There's your 4-bolt main cap. So this is a 4-bolt 400 right here. There's only 2 externally balanced Chevy engines from the first big blocks and the first small blocks. Now, the caveat is the 454 didn't come out until 1970, and neither did the 400 small block Chevy. And so this is a dead giveaway for a 400. It's got a counterweight. It's not just a neutral balanced flywheel or flex plate. This one's off of a 454, and you got a counterweight. So if you can see the counterweight when you're looking for these, so same with a big block. If you're looking for a 454 and it does not have this external balance, you're not looking at a 454. And again, on a 400, it's the only externally balanced small block that. Now, these are both 2-piece rear main seal engines, and Once they went to a one-piece rear main seal, then there were a lot more small blocks that were externally balanced using a weight on the flywheel or the harmonic balancer. But of the two-piece rear main seal generation of big and small blocks, these, a 454 or a 400, would be the only two that would be externally balanced. And ironically, both came out in 1970. So this is a 396. This is a big block. And the 396 stock had a 4.094 inch bore. And look how much meat is between the cylinders. These babies were stout. But the bore is just a skosh under 4.1 or 4/100,000ths, 4-inch 100,000ths. Where the 400 small block, which this one is, steam holes, and you can see how little meat there is between. But the 400 stock is a 4.125 inch bore, so it's a 4 1/8 inch. So the 400 actually has a bigger bore than a big block 396, which is, I find, kind of ironic. The other thing about the 400, and this is a bonus in my book, is if you have a 350, every sleeve is individual and water goes between them. That's why you have to have the steam holes here. There's no water passage. This is solid. So you can't get between you can't get from here to here. You got to have it goes through the steam hole up through the head and then back down through the other steam hole to get across. But that makes it so that this block is one solid piece. There's no gap in between. So this whole thing, all these cylinders, this is one solid chunk of metal all the way across. The cylinders the term is Siamese. So these are all Siamese together, and in my opinion, that makes the block way stronger than having each cylinder individually kind of hung out to dry and a gap in between them. I'm talking the gap in the water passage. So I think in a lot of ways, the 400 is actually a sturdier block because of the Siamese cylinders. One other difference in a 400 is all small blocks. Well, I shouldn't say all. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure that all other small blocks, especially 350s, they run a 5.7 inch rod stock. And on the 400, that's the only one I know of that runs the length rod. And I think it's a 5.570 inch rod. So they had to shorten the rod a good bit on these. Also, ironically, the 400 has the same stroke as a 427 big block. So it's kind of a unicorn that it's got a bigger bore than a 396 big block, and it's got the same stroke as a 427 big block. So a 350, for example, has a 4-inch bore and it has a 3.5-inch stroke, and a 400 has a 4 1/8 inch bore or a 4.125 inch bore, and it has a 3.750 or 3 3/4 inch stroke. So that's why they had to shorten the rod on the 400. The other thing is the bearing journal. The main bearing journal size on a 400 is larger than a 350. And I have run very many of these with the stock crank, stock rods, and then just put a forged piston in them. And I've run a lot of them with the stock pistons even. I've never had one break or blow up. And then it'll maybe a little controversial. I always put modern heads on these, or I've built some with like the camel hump heads, heads that are like this. So some decent early heads. And I'll do a video, but I just drill the steam holes. It's not that big of a deal. You can use your head gasket as a template and then drill the holes, and then you don't have any issues. But honestly, I bolted the modern aluminum heads on and didn't even bother with the steam holes, and I've never had a problem. The water still circulates. It is possible theoretically to have steam trapped there. But I think once the engine's been run a bit, It eventually purges, and I've honestly never had any problems just bolting the heads on and didn't even worry about the steam holes. But I don't recommend that. I'd say 95% of the time, I do use the head gasket as a template and put the steam holes in the modern head. So to summarize, about the only drawback, like if you were going to run a demolition derby, this might not be the greatest engine because, again, you don't have a lot of meat here to seal the head gasket. This is a 350 right here, and it's very obvious how much thicker that is. And honestly, if I was going to run a demo derby, I'd run a 305 because a 305 has an even smaller bore, and they have a ton of meat in between the cylinders, and so your head gaskets are going to hang on a lot longer. But other than this, the modern head gaskets are so good now. You just run a good head gasket. You're never going to have, I've never blown a head gasket with a 400. If there is a drawback, that would be about the only thing, is you got a little less meat here than you do on a 350. And so they could, I guess, be a little more prone to the head gasket blowing.